Chapter 1. The Girl Who Remembered. The rain had turned the cemetery path into a river of mud, but Elena Thorne didn't slow her pace. Behind her, voices echoed through the downpour. Men who wanted the documents she'd stolen, men who wouldn't stop until she was silenced. Her breath came in ragged gasps as she stumbled between weathered headstones, her fingers clutching the leather satchel against her chest. 18 years of planning, and it might end here, drowned in a nameless graveyard. Lightning split the sky, illuminating a mausoleum ahead. Ancient stone, Gothic arches, a door hanging slightly ajar. She didn't believe in luck, but she believed in survival. Elena threw herself through the opening just as footsteps splashed closer. Inside, darkness swallowed her whole. The air tasted of stone and something older, something that made her skin prickle with instinctive warning. Well, the voice emerged from shadows so complete they seemed alive. What desperate creature seeks sanctuary in my home? Elena's hand found the knife at her belt, though her heart hammered against her ribs. She'd prepared for many scenarios, but not this. Not him. Not yet. A match flared, revealing a face she'd memorized from aged photographs and older memories. High cheekbones, pale skin that seemed to glow in the dim light, eyes the color of winter storms. He looked exactly as he had 18 years ago, when she'd been a child of 7, standing in a different darkness. "You," she breathed. Lucian Corvus tilted his head, studying her with the patience of something that had outlived empires. He wore dark wool and silver rings, each one etched with symbols she'd spent years learning to decode. The match died, but he lit a candle with movements too fluid to be entirely human. "Do I know you?" His tone suggested mild curiosity, nothing more. Of course he didn't remember. She'd been a child, insignificant, easily dismissed. "No," Elena said, forcing her voice steady. "But I know you." The voices outside grew louder. Her pursuers had reached the cemetery. Lucian's eyes flickered toward the door, then back to her face. He moved closer, and she saw what photographs couldn't capture: the absolute stillness of his chest, the way candlelight didn't quite reach his eyes, the sense of compressed violence beneath gentlemen's clothes. "You're bleeding." He'd crossed the space between them without seeming to move, now standing close enough that she could smell cedar and old paper, his gaze fixed on the cut across her palm, where she'd caught herself falling. "And you've brought hunters to my door. They're not hunting you." "No, but they'll disturb my rest." Something dangerous flickered across his expression. "Tell me quickly. Why should I shelter you instead of throwing you to them?" This was the moment. Elena lifted her chin, meeting those ancient eyes with the courage she'd forged over 18 years. "Because I have information about House Vasilis. About why they're killing scholars who research the Nightfall Accords." Lucian went perfectly still. "How do you know that name?" "I know many things, Lord Corvus. I've made it my life's work to know." She reached into her satchel, pulling out a single page covered in archaic script. "This is one of 7 documents they're desperate to retrieve. It contains the original terms of the treaty between the vampire houses and the bloodline they swore to protect. The bloodline they're now hunting to extinction." Outside, someone shouted. They'd found the mausoleum. Lucian's hand shot out, gripping her wrist with cold fingers. "Not hard enough to hurt, but immovable as iron. You're lying. I'm not. And if you let them take me, you'll never know which bloodline." Elena held his stare, her pulse thundering where his thumb rested against her vein. She wondered if he could feel it, the desperate rhythm of human life. "I'm worth more alive, Lord Corvus. At least for tonight." For 3 heartbeats he studied her face as if reading a language written beneath her skin. Then he released her wrist, turned toward the door, and spoke a single word in a language that predated Latin. The mausoleum door slammed shut with a sound like thunder, and she heard locks engaging, locks that shouldn't exist, metal grinding into stone with impossible force. "They won't breach it before dawn," Lucian said. "You have until then to convince me you're telling the truth." He gestured deeper into the mausoleum, where candlelight revealed descending stairs. "Come. We have much to discuss, and I find I'm curious about what drives a woman to carry stolen documents through a storm while bleeding." Elena hesitated at the threshold. Once she descended those stairs, there would be no retreat. But retreat had never been part of her plan. After you, she said. His smile was slight, knowing. How refreshingly cautious. Very well. He moved past her toward the stairs, then paused. I should warn you, I don't offer sanctuary lightly, and I never forget a debt. Good, Elena whispered to his back. Neither do I. She followed him into the darkness beneath the earth, toward the vampire who'd once looked at a 7-year-old girl and said the words that had shaped her entire life. I don't bite children. You're of no use to me. 18 years had passed. She was no longer a child. And she'd returned with more than revenge in her heart. She'd returned with the one thing an immortal predator couldn't resist. Knowledge that could destroy him. Or save him. Chapter 2. The Archive of Shadows. The stairs spiraled down through stone that predated the cemetery above. Elena's boots echoed in the narrow passage, each step taking her deeper into what felt like the throat of some sleeping beast. Lucian moved ahead with the grace of something that had never stumbled, never fallen, the candle he carried painting shadows across walls carved with symbols she recognized from her research. Wards against intrusion. Markers of territory. Warnings in dead languages. How long have you lived here? She asked, needing to fill the silence with something other than her own breathing. I don't live anywhere. I exist in places. His voice drifted back to her, edged with amusement. This sanctuary has served me for 63 years. Before that, a monastery in Prague. Before that, a ship bound for ports that no longer exist. The stairs opened into a chamber that stole her breath. It was a library, vast, impossible, its ceiling lost in shadows high above. Shelves climbed the walls like ivy, packed with books and scrolls and documents that spanned centuries. A fire burned in a massive hearth without any visible source of fuel, casting amber light across furniture that belonged in museums. Persian rugs, medieval tapestries, a desk of dark mahogany covered in correspondence written in spidery hands. My God, Elena whispered. He has little to do with this place. Lucian set the candle on his desk, then turned to face her fully. In the firelight, his features held a terrible beauty, the kind that made mortals write poetry and lose their minds. Now, let's discuss why you're really here, scholar who knows my name and speaks of forgotten treaties. Elena forced herself to look away from his face, focusing instead on steadying her nerves. She'd planned this confrontation in her mind 1,000 times, but reality felt different, sharper, more dangerous. My name is Elena Thorne. I'm a historical researcher specializing in supernatural history, specifically the peace treaties established during the Nightfall era. She moved toward the fire, letting its warmth chase away the cemetery's chill. 3 months ago, someone broke into my apartment and destroyed 10 years of work. 2 weeks after that, my mentor was found dead, his research stolen. 7 days ago, they came for me. House Vasilis. Lucian settled into a chair behind his desk, steepling his fingers. You mentioned them before? What makes you certain they're responsible? Because I know what they're looking for. Elena pulled the stolen document from her satchel, laying it carefully on his desk. The bloodline clause. The agreement that ended the war of houses by binding certain vampire lineages to protect specific human families with unique blood, properties that could strengthen or destroy vampiric power. Lucian's eyes flickered to the document, but he didn't reach for it. Ancient history. Those families died out centuries ago. Most did, but not all. Elena met his gaze. House Vasilis has been systematically eliminating anyone who might prove that one bloodline survived. Because if it survived, the treaty's terms are still binding, and they've been violating those terms for decades. Fascinating theory. Lucian's tone remained neutral, but she saw the shift in his posture, the subtle tension of a predator reassessing prey. And what does this have to do with you, Miss Thorne? I can prove the bloodline exists. I have the genealogical records, cross-referenced with birth records and genetic markers spanning 4 centuries. House Vasilis wants those records destroyed and anyone who's seen them dead. She paused, gathering courage for the next words. I'm willing to trade that information. For protection, I'm not a bodyguard. No. You're the alpha of House Corvus, one of the 5 founding houses, and the only vampire lord still alive who was present at the original treaty signing. Elena had done her research well. House Vasilis can't move against you openly without triggering a house war. If I'm under your protection, you're asking me to make an enemy of Constantine Vasilis. Lucian's laugh was soft, dark. Bold, perhaps foolish. He's already your enemy. You just haven't acknowledged it yet. Something flickered in Lucian's expression. Surprise, perhaps, or respect. He finally reached for the document, scanning it with eyes that could read in near darkness. Elena watched his face, searching for any reaction, but he'd had centuries to perfect his mask. "This is genuine," he said finally. "Where did you acquire it? Does it matter?" "It does if you stole it from someone who will come seeking revenge." Elena smiled without humor. "Everyone who knew I had it is already dead. Except you. And me." Lucian set the document down, regarding her with new intensity. The fire crackled in the silence, sending sparks up the chimney. Outside the mausoleum, dawn must be approaching. Her pursuers would have fled by now, but they'd return tomorrow night, and the night after, until she was silenced. "You're either very brave or very desperate," Lucian said. "I haven't decided which." "Both." Elena's exhaustion was catching up with her now, adrenaline fading to leave trembling fatigue. "I won't beg, but I'm offering you something valuable. Proof of a treaty violation that could shift the balance of power between the houses. All I ask in return is time to finish my research and protection until I can expose House Vasilis publicly. And if I refuse, then I'll find another way. But you'll have missed your chance to settle what I suspect is a very old score with Constantine." Lucian's eyes narrowed. He stood, moving around the desk with that unnatural grace, stopping close enough that she had to tilt her head back to hold his gaze. This close, she could see the absence of human warmth, the way his skin seemed carved from marble, beautiful and cold. "You presume to know my grievances? I know he killed someone you loved during the War of Houses. I know you've been waiting 300 years for justified cause to move against him." Elena's voice dropped. "I can give you that cause, if you can keep me alive long enough." For a long moment, Lucian simply stared at her. Then unexpectedly he smiled. A real smile that transformed his face from beautiful to devastating. "Welcome to my sanctuary, Miss Thorne. Consider yourself under the protection of House Corvus." He extended his hand. "But know this, I will expect full transparency. Every document, every secret. And if you've lied to me about any of this, you'll kill me yourself." Elena took his hand. His skin was cold as winter stone, his grip gentle but absolutely controlled. "I understand." "Good. Then let's begin with why a human scholar knows so much about vampiric history." Lucian's smile turned sharp. "And why you looked at me upstairs as though you'd seen a ghost." Elena's heart skipped. He'd noticed. Of course he'd noticed, but she wasn't ready to tell him the truth. Not yet. Not until she understood whether the man who'd rejected a desperate child still existed beneath the ancient predator's mask. "That," she said carefully, "is a longer story. We have time." Lucian released her hand, gesturing to a chair near the fire. "Dawn is coming. You'll rest here today. Tonight you'll tell me everything. And Miss Thorne? Yes? Don't lie to me again. I can hear your heartbeat quicken when you withhold truth." His eyes gleamed in the firelight. It's a remarkably distracting sound. Chapter 3. The Truth of Fangs. Elena woke to the smell of old books and something sweeter. Jasmine tea, steam rising from a cup on the table beside the velvet sofa where she'd collapsed. For a disorienting moment, she couldn't remember where she was. Then memory returned in a rush. The chase, the mausoleum, Lucian's cold hand in hers. The library was darker now. The fire burned low. A clock somewhere chimed 7 times. Evening. She'd slept through the entire day. "Good. You're awake." Lucian's voice came from across the room, where he stood before a wall of books, sliding volumes aside with the efficiency of someone cataloging a collection. He'd changed clothes, now wearing a shirt of charcoal linen and dark trousers, his silver rings catching what little light remained. "You talk in your sleep. Did you know?" Elena sat up quickly, her hand instinctively checking that her satchel remained beside her. "What did I say?" "Nothing coherent." Names mostly, numbers. Once, you said, "Not a child anymore," with such vehemence I nearly woke you. He turned, and in the low light, his eyes reflected like an animal's, there one moment, gone the next. "What did you dream about, Elena Thorne?" "Nothing important." She reached for the tea, grateful for something to do with her hands. It was still hot, impossibly so, as though he'd somehow known the exact moment she'd wake. "How long have you been awake?" "I don't sleep as you do. I rest during daylight, a state somewhere between consciousness and oblivion, unpleasant but necessary." Lucian moved toward his desk, where he'd spread her documents alongside much older texts, their pages yellowed with age. "I spent today verifying your claims. You were right. These documents are genuine, and they prove House Vasilis has been violating the bloodline clause for at least 70 years. Elena's pulse quickened. "You believe me. I believe the evidence. Whether I believe you remains to be seen." He gestured to the chair opposite his desk. "Sit. It's time you told me the rest of this story, starting with how you knew where to find me." She'd known this conversation was coming, but that didn't make it easier. Elena set down the tea and moved to the desk, settling into the leather chair. The documents laid out before her represented years of work, stolen piece by piece from archives and private collections, translated from languages most scholars believed extinct. "I've been researching vampire history since I was 12, she began carefully. "My mother died when I was young, and I was sent to live with my aunt, a woman obsessed with folklore and supernatural myths. She had a library that would rival this one, filled with books most people believe are fiction. Your aunt knew the truth about vampires. She knew enough to be dangerous. And stupid." Elena's voice hardened. "When I was 7, she brought me to a gathering, a meeting between humans and vampires, some kind of negotiation over territory rights in London. I didn't understand what was happening. I just knew the people there were different, wrong somehow, beautiful and terrible." Lucian had gone very still. "Continue." "There was a vampire there, the most powerful one present. Everyone deferred to him. My aunt tried to use me as a bargaining chip. She believed that children held some special value to your kind, that offering a child service might gain her favor or protection." Elena's hands clenched on the armrests. She was wrong. The vampire looked at me and said, "I don't bite children. You're of no use to me." Then he had us both removed from the gathering. The silence that followed felt alive, pressing against her skin. Lucian's face had become a mask, utterly unreadable. My aunt was killed 3 months later. House Vasilis, though I didn't know it then. They eliminated her for knowing too much, for speaking too freely about things humans weren't supposed to understand. Elena forced herself to meet Lucian's eyes. "I spent the next 18 years making myself useful, learning everything I could about your world, about the houses and their politics and their weaknesses, so that when I came back, I would be of use, so that you couldn't dismiss me again. Elena." Lucian's voice was soft, dangerous. "Look at me. Truly look at me," she did, and saw the recognition dawning in his storm-gray eyes. "The child in London," he said. "The girl with the aunt who tried to trade her like currency. That was you. Yes, and you've spent 18 years preparing for this moment. This revenge." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You're not here for protection at all, are you? You're here because you want me to see that you're no longer a powerless child. You want me to acknowledge you. I want you to help me destroy House Vasilis," Elena said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Whether you remember me or not is irrelevant." Liar. Lucian moved with inhuman speed, suddenly standing beside her chair, close enough that she could feel the unnatural cold radiating from his skin. "Your heartbeat betrays you. This is personal. You've built your entire adult life around returning to face me. So what if I have?" Elena rose to face him, refusing to be intimidated. "You were right that night. I was useless, a liability, but I'm not anymore. I have the knowledge and documents to prove House Vasilis is violating sacred treaty law. I can give you the leverage you need to move against Constantine Vasilis. That's not useless." "No," Lucian agreed. "It's not." Glass shattered somewhere above, the sound of windows breaking, multiple impacts. Elena's blood went cold. Lucian's head snapped toward the ceiling, his expression transforming into something predatory. "They found you faster than I anticipated. His hand closed around her wrist. "Come now." "Who? House Vasilis? They must have tracked you to the cemetery, waited for nightfall." He pulled her toward a bookshelf on the far wall, pressing a hidden mechanism. The shelf swung inward, revealing a passage carved through solid rock. "They won't breach my wards easily, but Constantine himself may be with them, and he's old enough to force entry given time." Elena's mind raced. "He's here? The Alpha of House Vasilis? You made yourself important enough to warrant his personal attention. Congratulations." Lucian thrust a leather pack into her arms. "That contains copies of your documents and supplies for 3 days. There's a tunnel system beneath the cemetery. Follow it east until you reach the old church, St. Margaret's. Wait for me there." "What about you?" "I'm going to remind House Vasilis why even Constantine fears crossing me." His eyes had gone completely black, no white visible. And when he smiled, she saw his fangs for the first time, elegant, sharp, designed for the kill. "Go. Now." "Lucian." He pushed her into the passage and the bookshelf began swinging shut. "If I don't come by dawn, burn everything in that pack. Tell no one what you know, and run, Elena Thorne. Run as far as your mortal legs can carry you." The shelf closed with a final click, leaving her in absolute darkness. Above, she heard shouting in a language she didn't recognize, followed by a sound like thunder. The vampire who'd dismissed her as a child was about to go to war. Because of her. To protect her. Elena's hand found a torch on the tunnel wall, and she lit it with matches from the pack. The passage stretched ahead, rough-hewn stone disappearing into shadow. She should run. That was the logical choice. But she'd spent 18 years refusing to run. Her fingers closed around the knife at her belt. She'd come prepared for many things tonight. And if Lucian Corvus thought she was still a helpless child who needed saving, he was about to learn exactly how wrong he was. Elena turned back toward the library, toward the sounds of battle, toward the vampire who'd rejected her once. This time she would be useful. Or die proving it. Chapter 4. Blood and Ashes. Elena crept back through the tunnel, every instinct screaming that this was suicide. The leather pack weighed heavy on her shoulder, documents that could change the balance of power between vampire houses, and she was running toward danger instead of away from it. But 18 years of planning hadn't prepared her to abandon someone, fighting on her behalf. Even if that someone was a centuries-old predator who probably didn't need her help, the bookshelf entrance was designed to open, from the inside, a safety measure that now worked in her favor. She pressed the mechanism and slipped through the narrow opening, emerging into chaos. The library was a battlefield. Shelves had been overturned, books scattered like dead birds, and the ancient tapestries smoldered with unnatural fire. The air tasted of smoke and something metallic. Blood, she realized. Vampire blood smelled different from human, sweeter and somehow older. 3 figures surrounded Lucian near the fireplace. They moved with the same inhuman grace, dressed in dark clothing that seemed to absorb light. House Vasilis, she assumed. One was female, hair like spilled ink, carrying twin daggers that gleamed silver. The other 2 were male, broader, flanking Lucian with the coordination of wolves cornering prey. Except Lucian didn't look cornered. He looked lethal. "Constantine sends his regards," the female vampire said, her accent Eastern European, thick with centuries. "He wants the human, alive if possible, dead if necessary. Tell Constantine he can come claim her himself, if he dares." Lucian's voice was silk over steel. Blood ran from a cut on his temple. One of them had landed a blow. Or are the Vasilis so weak now they send children to do their hunting? The insult landed. The larger male lunged, moving faster than Elena's eyes could track. But Lucian was faster. He sidestepped with impossible grace, caught the vampire's arm and twisted. The crack of breaking bone echoed through the library. The vampire screamed, a sound too high-pitched to be human, and stumbled back. "Petter, you fool!" the female hissed. "He's baiting you." But the second male was already moving, coordinating with the female in a pincer attack. Lucian blocked the male's strike, but took the female's dagger across his ribs. His shirt split open, revealing pale skin that knitted itself back together even as blood welled from the wound. Not fast enough, though. The silver in the blade was slowing his healing. Elena's hand tightened on her knife. Silver hurt vampires, that much of the folklore was true, which meant the weapon she carried, steel blessed by a dying priest, would be useless against them. But it might work as a distraction. She threw it. The blade spun through the air, catching firelight, and embedded itself in the wounded male vampire's shoulder. He whirled toward her, his face transforming into something from Nightmare. Eyes gone black, fangs extended, a snarl that exposed too many teeth. The human. The female shouted, "Alive, Petter!" Petter launched himself toward Elena with speed that shouldn't exist. She had 1 second to register her mistake, throwing her only weapon, revealing her position, and then Lucian was there. He'd crossed the entire library in an eye blink, intercepting Peter mid-lunge. They collided with force that cracked the stone floor, rolling in a tangle of limbs and violence. The female vampire appeared at Elena's side before she could run. Cold fingers closed around her throat, lifting her off her feet with casual strength. "Stupid girl. You should have stayed in the tunnel." Elena couldn't breathe. Her vision started to gray at the edges. She clawed at the vampire's hand, but it was like trying to move iron. Through her dimming sight, she saw Lucian tear Petter's throat out with his bare hands, saw the other vampire crumble to ash, saw a roar that wasn't quite human. Lucian slammed into the female vampire, breaking her grip on Elena's throat. They went down together, and Elena collapsed to her knees, gasping, her crushed windpipe screaming with every breath. "You dare touch what's under my protection?" Lucian's voice had gone guttural, inhuman. He pinned the female vampire to the ground, his hand around her throat in mirror of how she'd held Elena. "Tell me why I shouldn't end you." "Because Constantine will declare blood war," the female choked out. "He knows about the treaty. He knows the human has proof. You can't protect her forever, Corvus." "I don't need forever. Just long enough." Lucian's grip tightened. "Leave. Tell your alpha that Elena Thorne is under House Corvus protection. Tell him if he sends assassins to my sanctuary again, I'll take it as declaration of war. And tell him," his smile was terrifying, "tell him I haven't forgotten Prague." The female vampire's eyes widened. Whatever happened in Prague, it frightened her more than death. Lucian released her and she scrambled backward, moving for the shattered windows. She paused at the threshold. "This isn't over." "No," Lucian agreed. "It's just beginning." She vanished into the night, leaving only ashes and blood behind. The library settled into eerie quiet. Lucian stood there, his chest heaving despite not needing breath, his shirt in tatters, wounds already closing. He looked at Elena, and for a moment, she saw something ancient and alien behind his eyes. Then he was moving toward her, kneeling at her side. "Let me see." Elena tried to speak, but her throat wouldn't cooperate. She managed a nod. Lucian's fingers were gentle as they probed her neck, checking for crushing damage. His touch was still cold, but somehow steadying. "You'll bruise, but nothing's permanently damaged." His voice had returned to normal, cultured, controlled. "That was extraordinarily foolish. Why didn't you run?" Elena forced words through her aching throat. "You were outnumbered. I'm 300 years old. They were children." But his eyes softened slightly. "Though I admit, your distraction was helpful. I can be useful. You can be reckless." Lucian pulled her to her feet with effortless strength. "You could have died, Elena. Vampires don't show mercy to humans who interfere in house business. Neither do humans show mercy to those who dismiss them." The words came out harsher than intended, shaped by fear and fading adrenaline. "I won't hide while others fight for me. Not anymore." Lucian studied her face in the firelight, and something shifted in his expression. Understanding, perhaps, or recognition of a kindred stubbornness. "You really have spent 18 years refusing to be helpless, haven't you?" "Every single day." He laughed, short and genuine. "Come, we can't stay here. House Vasilis knows this location now, and Constantine will send more than 3 next time." He moved to his desk, gathering documents with swift efficiency. "There's a safe house in the countryside. We'll wait there while I contact the other houses. Make your protection official." Elena retrieved the leather pack, slinging it over her shoulder. Her hands were shaking, aftermath of violence, of nearly dying. "How long will that take?" "Days, maybe weeks." Lucian pulled on a dark coat covering his ruined shirt. You'll have time to finish your research, and I'll have time to decide what to do with a human who throws knives at vampires to save someone who doesn't need saving. You were bleeding. I heal. He turned to her, and his expression was difficult to read. But thank you. It's been a very long time since anyone tried to protect me. The vulnerability in those words caught Elena off guard. For a moment, she glimpsed the man beneath the predator, lonely, ancient, weary of immortality's weight. Then he smiled and the mask returned. Let's go. Dawn is 4 hours away, and we have ground to cover. They left through the tunnel, the library burning behind them with fire that would consume all evidence of the night's battle. As they climbed into darkness, Elena thought about the vampire who'd dismissed a child and the woman who'd returned for revenge. Except revenge was starting to feel less important than survival, and survival meant trusting Lucian Corvus with her life. The vampire who'd rejected her had just nearly died protecting her. Perhaps some things changed, even across 18 years. Chapter 5. Sanctuary in Stone. The safe house was a manor buried in woods so deep that daylight barely penetrated the canopy. Lucian led Elena through a servant's entrance, their footsteps echoing in empty halls lined with portraits of people long dead. The furniture wore shrouds like ghosts, and dust motes danced in the beam of his flashlight. How many properties do you own? Elena asked, her voice still rough from the female vampire's grip. Enough that House Vasilis can't watch them all. Lucian pulled the shroud from a sofa in what had once been a drawing room. Beneath the cloth, the velvet was deep burgundy, surprisingly intact. This manor belonged to a textile merchant in the 1800s. He owed me a favor, left it to me in his will. I haven't visited in decades. Elena set down the leather pack, studying the room. A fireplace dominated one wall, its mantel carved with roses and thorns. Windows overlooked the woods, their glass warped with age. The ceiling was painted with a mural. Angels and demons locked in eternal battle, their faces both beautiful and terrible. It's fitting, she murmured. What is? Angels and demons, given present company. Lucian's laugh surprised her. Which am I, do you think? Both. Neither. Elena moved to the fireplace, finding kindling already laid. Lucian must have prepared the house earlier. You're something else entirely. More honest than most answers I receive. He produced matches from his coat, crouching beside her to light the fire. In the growing flames, his profile was sharp as a knife, beautiful and deadly. Most humans either romanticize what I am or fear it. You seem to do neither. I've read too much about your kind to romanticize. And fear? Elena paused, considering. Fear seems pointless. You'd kill me easily if you wanted to. True. Does that comfort or terrify you? Neither. It just is. She met his eyes across the flames. You said earlier that I talk in my sleep. What else did I say? Lucian settled back on his heels, studying her. You said remember me 3 times. And once you said I'm sorry with such anguish I almost did wake you. His head tilted. What do you have to be sorry for, Elena Thorne? The question hit harder than expected. Elena turned away, busying herself with pulling supplies from the pack. Dried food, bottled water, a change of clothes. Nothing that concerns you. Everything about you concerns me now. You're my responsibility. I never asked to be your responsibility. No. You asked for protection. You received it. There's a difference. Lucian rose, moving to the windows. Outside, the woods were ink black, impenetrable. House Vasilis will be hunting for us. Constantine is persistent and cruel. If he finds us before I can secure formal support from the other houses, he'll kill you simply to prove he can. Elena's hand stilled on the pack. Tell me about him. About what happened in Prague. Why do you want to know? Because that female vampire looked genuinely frightened when you mentioned it. And I need to understand who we're fighting. Lucian was quiet for so long she thought he might not answer. Then he spoke, his voice soft with memory. Prague, 1889. Constantine fell in love with a human woman, a violinist named Adela. For 3 years he courted her, offered her immortality. She refused. She didn't want to become what he was. His fingers traced patterns on the window glass, so he turned her anyway. Without her consent, made her immortal against her will. Elena's stomach turned. And you? I killed him for it. Or tried to. You can't kill an alpha easily, but I came close enough that he bears the scars still. Lucian's reflection in the glass was emotionless. Adela walked into sunlight 3 days after her turning. She chose death over eternity as something she didn't want to become. God, Elena whispered. God had nothing to do with it. Just vampiric arrogance. The belief that immortality is a gift, regardless of whether it's wanted. He turned from the window. I swore then that I would never force my nature on anyone, that I would never take what wasn't freely given. Blood, life, or eternity. The words hung between them, heavy with implication. Elena remembered the treaty documents, the passages about consent-based feeding, the prohibition against forced turning. That's why you helped write the bloodline clause. It wasn't just about ending the war. You wanted to enshrine consent into treaty law. Someone had to. Lucian moved back to the fire, settling into an armchair across from her. Most of my kind view humans as livestock at best, playthings at worst. The treaty was the only way to protect certain bloodlines from becoming breeding stock or worse. But House Vasilis has been violating it. For decades, yes, they've been hunting bloodline descendants, experimenting on them, trying to isolate whatever genetic marker makes their blood valuable to our kind. His expression darkened. Constantine believes if he can synthesize that property, he can break free of the treaty's limitations. Feed without consent, turn whomever he wishes, become unstoppable. Elena's mind raced, connecting pieces. That's why he wants my research. I've documented which bloodlines still exist, where they are. I've given him a roadmap to his experiments. Yes. Which means keeping you alive is the only way to prevent him from succeeding. Lucian leaned forward, elbows on knees. Tell me something, Elena. Why did your aunt bring you to that gathering in London? What did she really want? The question she'd been avoiding. Elena wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold despite the fire. She believed I was descended from one of the bloodlines. She thought if she offered me to the vampires, they'd protect her in exchange. Lucian went very still. Was she right? I don't know. She died before she could prove it. Elena forced herself to meet his eyes. That's the other reason I spent 18 years researching. I needed to know if I was just human or if I was something more, something dangerous, and I found records. Genealogies that trace back to a bloodline called Thornwood. Protectors who could sense vampiric presence, whose blood could temporarily strengthen or weaken depending on the vampire's intentions. Good vampires were bolstered. Evil ones were poisoned. She laughed bitterly. Medieval superstition, probably. But my aunt believed it, and now Constantine believes it too, or he wouldn't be hunting me so aggressively. Lucian had gone absolutely motionless. That predator's stillness she was learning to recognize. Elena, when I held your wrist in the mausoleum, I felt something. A resonance I haven't felt in centuries. What do you mean? Your blood sings. Not loudly, but it's there, like a tuning fork pitched at a frequency only old vampires can hear. He rose, crossing to kneel before her chair. I didn't believe the Thornwood line survived. But if you are truly descended from them, then what? Then you're far more valuable than you know, and far more dangerous to House Vasilis. His hand lifted as if to touch her face, then fell. The Thornwood bloodline was special because they could judge vampiric nature. Constantine fears that judgment above all things, because he knows what he is, and he knows what verdict your blood would render. Elena's heart hammered. I'm not special. I'm just a researcher who threw herself into danger to save a vampire she barely knows, who spent 18 years making herself useful because she refused to remain powerless, who tastes like absolution and damnation combined. Lucian's voice had gone rough. You're more than you think, Elena Thorne. And that terrifies you, doesn't it? It did. God, it did. Because being special meant being hunted. Being powerful meant being dangerous. And being descended from bloodline protectors meant she could never be just human again. What do I do? She whispered. You trust me. Lucian's hand finally touched her face, cold fingers gentle against her bruised throat. You let me protect you. And when the time comes, you make a choice. Run and hide forever, or stand and fight. I'm tired of running. I know. His thumb traced her jawline. That's what makes you dangerous. To Konstantin. To yourself. Maybe even to me. Are you afraid of me? No. His smile was soft, real. I'm afraid for you. There's a difference. The fire crackled between them, painting shadows across walls that had witnessed a century of secrets. Outside, the woods pressed close, hiding them from enemies and allies alike. Dawn was 3 hours away. They had time. Precious little, but time nonetheless. Elena covered Lucian's cold hand with her warm one. Tell me what happens next. Next, you rest. I'll keep watch. He withdrew his hand, standing. Tomorrow night, we begin reaching out to the other houses, building your protection into something formal, unbreakable. And if they refuse, then we run. Far and fast. His expression hardened. But it won't come to that. I have leverage, and I'm not afraid to use it. Elena nodded, exhaustion finally catching up to her. The sofa was surprisingly comfortable, the fire warm. As her eyes drifted closed, she felt Lucian drape a blanket over her, such a human gesture from something inhuman. Lucian? She murmured. Yes? Thank you. For not leaving me in the mausoleum. Thank you for not staying in the tunnel. She smiled against the cushion. I'm still not a child. No, he agreed softly. You most certainly are not. Chapter 6. The Judgment of Blood. Elena woke to voices. Lucian's low and controlled, another male voice sharp with aristocratic disdain. She lay still, listening, as the unfamiliar voice spoke from somewhere near the manor's entrance. You're harboring a human who's destabilizing house politics. Constantine has every right to demand her surrender. Constantine has no rights where House Corvus is concerned. The treaty is clear. Bloodline descendants receive protection from all 5 founding houses. Lucian's footsteps moved across hardwood floors. Or have you forgotten your ancestor's signature on that document, Marcus? Marcus, house name unknown, but clearly another vampire. Elena sat up carefully, spotting her jacket draped over a chair. The leather pack sat beside it, within reach. Old habits. Always know where your escape tools are. The treaty is 3 centuries old. Times change. Treaties don't. That's rather the point of them. Papers rustled. Lucian was showing documentation, Elena realized. Her documentation. Elena Thorne has proven bloodline descent from the Thornwood line. According to the bloodline clause, she's entitled to formal protection. I'm simply fulfilling House Corvus's obligations. A long pause. Elena risked peering around the drawing room door. The entrance hall was vast, chandelier covered in cobwebs, and 2 vampires faced each other in a shaft of moonlight, Lucian calm and dangerous. The other vampire, Marcus, was older in appearance, gray-haired, wearing an expensive suit that belonged in boardrooms, not abandoned manners. The Thornwood line died out in 1847, Marcus said flatly. Clearly not. Lucian indicated Elena's documents spread across a hall table. The genealogical records are impeccable. Cross-referenced with birth records, death certificates, genetic markers. Elena Thorne is the last living descendant of the Thornwood bloodline, which means she falls under treaty protection. Marcus finally moved toward the documents, scanning them with obvious skepticism. If this is true, Constantine will never accept it. He spent decades operating outside treaty constraints. Acknowledging bloodline protection now would force him to cease his experiments, release his captives. Exactly. Which is why he's desperate to eliminate Elena before I can formalize her protection with the council. Lucian's voice went colder. You came here to assess whether I'm bluffing, Marcus. I'm not. This is real. The question is whether House Draven will honor the treaty or side with Constantine's violations. House Draven. Elena's research surfaced. One of the 5 founding houses, known for neutrality, based in Vienna. Marcus Draven was their current alpha, a vampire who'd survived the Napoleonic Wars by playing all sides. You're asking me to make an enemy of House Vasilis. Marcus set down the documents. That's not a small thing. I'm asking you to honor your ancestor's word. Your signature on the treaty, my great-grandfather's signature, binds you regardless of generational distance. You know this. The treaty magic ensures it. Lucian moved closer, and the temperature seemed to drop. Or shall I remind you what happens when an alpha forswears their ancestors' oaths? Marcus's jaw tightened. That's a threat. It's a fact. Magic bound those oaths. Break them, and the magic breaks you. Lucian's smile was sharp. I don't want conflict with House Draven, Marcus. But I won't let Constantine murder an innocent woman, because acknowledging her existence is politically inconvenient. Innocent? Marcus laughed. She's a researcher who's documented our existence, our weaknesses, our internal politics. She's dangerous, Lucian, not because of her blood, but because of her knowledge. Then you admit she needs protection. Dangerous women tend to meet unfortunate ends otherwise. The two vampires stared at each other, centuries of vampire politics playing out in silence. Elena's hand found her jacket, ready to run if this went badly. But Lucian seemed confident, even relaxed, as though he'd anticipated every argument. Finally, Marcus sighed. Show me the blood test. If she's truly Thornwood, I'll know. Elena, Lucian called softly, you can come out now. She'd been discovered. No point hiding. Elena stepped into the entrance hall, meeting Marcus Draven's ancient gaze. Up close, he looked less old and more timeless, face unlined but eyes full of centuries. He studied her with the intensity of someone reading a language written in flesh. Elena Thorne, this is Marcus Draven, Alpha of House Draven. Marcus, this is the woman I've sworn to protect. Interesting. Marcus circled her slowly, and Elena fought the urge to retreat. She doesn't look special. Most dangerous things don't. Fair point. Marcus stopped in front of her. I'm going to ask you a question, Miss Thorne. Please answer honestly. Have you consumed vampire blood? No. Have you been turned or partially turned? No. Have you made any blood oaths or pacts with vampiric entities? No. Elena's irritation grew. I'm human. Entirely human, just possibly descended from a bloodline your kind found useful centuries ago. Marcus smiled slightly, spirit at least. Lucian, do you have a blade? Lucian produced a silver knife from somewhere inside his coat. Elena's eyes widened. What exactly are you planning? The blood test. Marcus accepted the knife, then held out his own palm. I'm going to cut myself. Then you. Our blood will mix. If you're Thornwood, my blood will react. It will either strengthen or weaken based on my intentions toward you. And your intentions are? Neutral curiosity, which means the blood will do nothing if you're ordinary human. He drew the knife across his palm without flinching. Dark blood welled up, that same sweet metallic scent Elena remembered from the library battle. If you're Thornwood, my blood will sing, for lack of a better word. It's unmistakable. Elena looked at Lucian, who nodded. It won't hurt you. And it's the only way to prove your heritage beyond documentation. She extended her hand, trying not to tremble. Marcus's grip was cold and firm as he drew the knife across her palm. Her blood looked shockingly red against his darker fluid. He pressed their palms together. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the air between their hands began to glow, faint, pulsing, like bioluminescent algae in dark water. Marcus inhaled sharply. The glow intensified, and Elena felt something move through her blood, a warmth spreading up her arm. Not painful, but strange, powerful, impossible, Marcus whispered. The glow faded. He released her hand, staring at his palm where the cut was already healing. She's pure Thornwood. I felt the judgment clear as daylight. My blood recognized her, tried to strengthen itself in her presence because I mean her no harm. You believe me now? Lucian's voice held quiet triumph. I believe the evidence. Marcus wiped his palm on a handkerchief. This changes everything. If she's genuine Thornwood, and Constantine has been hunting her bloodline. He turned to Elena. How many others like you exist? None that I can find. If there were others, they've been killed or gone so deep into hiding that even 18 years of research couldn't locate them. Then you're the last. Marcus exchanged a look with Lucian. The last living judge of vampiric nature. Do you understand what that means? That I'm valuable. And endangered. More than that. The Thornwood bloodline was created through ancient magic. A human bloodline altered to serve as arbiters between vampires and humans. Your blood doesn't just react to our intentions. It can amplify noble vampires and poison evil ones. You're a walking verdict, Miss Thorne. Every vampire who touches you will be judged. Elena's knees weakened. Lucian's hand steadied her elbow. I don't want to judge anyone. I just want to finish my research and stop Constantine from experimenting on bloodline descendants like you. Yes. Marcus's expression softened slightly. I'll support your claim before the council. House Draven recognizes your right to treaty protection, but understand, this won't end with Constantine's defeat. Every vampire with guilty conscience or noble ambition will want access to you. You've just become the most sought-after human in our world. Wonderful, Elena muttered. There's something else. Marcus pulled a phone from his suit pocket, jarring modern technology in his ancient hands. I received word while traveling here. House Vasilis has captured someone, a human researcher named Thomas Marlowe. They're offering a trade, him for you. Elena's blood went cold. Thomas is alive? You know him? Lucian asked sharply. He was my mentor. The one I told you was killed. They have him? Hope and dread warred in her chest. He's alive? For now, Constantine is giving you 48 hours to surrender yourself in exchange for Marlowe's freedom. Marcus met her eyes. It's a trap, of course. He'll kill you both once he has what he wants. I know. Elena pulled away from Lucian, pacing. Thomas had been like a father after her aunt died. Patient, brilliant, the one who'd encouraged her research. She'd mourned him for weeks, and he'd been Constantine's prisoner this entire time. But I can't just leave him. You can and will. Lucian's voice was flat. This is exactly the response Constantine wants. He's using your compassion against you. Then he's smarter than I gave him credit for. Elena turned. I'm not asking for permission, Lucian. I'm telling you, I have to try. Try what? Suicide? Because that's what this is. Then come with me. Use it as an opportunity. Constantine will be there personally. You said yourself you've been waiting for justified cause to move against him. This is it. He's violated treaty law, held hostages, hunted bloodline descendants. The council will support action against him if we have proof. She's right. Marcus sounded reluctant. If we could document Constantine's violations, prove he's holding Marlowe against treaty law, it would give us leverage to move against him formally. You're both insane. But Lucian's expression had shifted, calculating now, strategic. Even if we could infiltrate Constantine's stronghold and extract Marlowe, the risk is mine to take. Elena moved toward him, holding his gaze. You told me I'd have to choose. Run and hide or stand and fight. I'm choosing to fight, with or without you. Lucian stared at her, and she saw the war behind his eyes, the desire to keep her safe versus respect for her agency. Finally, he nodded once, sharp. If we do this, we do it my way. Full planning. Back up from Marcus. And Elena, you follow my lead without question. Understood? Understood. Good. Because if you die rescuing your mentor, I'm going to be very annoyed. His smile was slight. I've grown rather fond of humans who throw knives at vampires. Chapter 7. The Road to Reckoning. They spent the day planning in the Manor's library, a smaller echo of Lucian's destroyed sanctuary, but serviceable. Maps spread across the desk. Constantine's estate in the Carpathian Mountains, a fortress built into cliffs, accessible only by a single mountain road. Marcus had provided intelligence from House Draven's sources, guard rotations, security systems both mundane and magical, the approximate location where hostages were kept. He's expecting you to come, Marcus said, indicating the estate's main entrance. Heavy fortification here and here. Silver-loaded weapons, daylight lamps for interior defense, blood wards that will alert him the moment a foreign vampire crosses the threshold. So we don't use the entrance. Lucian traced a line along the cliff face. There, old servants' passage built in the 1600s when the estate was a monastery. Constantine keeps it sealed, but the stone is crumbling. We could breach it. Elena studied the map, her mind cataloging details. If Thomas is being held in the lower levels, we'd need to pass through the main hall regardless. Guards will see us, not if they're looking elsewhere. Marcus pulled out a second map, the surrounding valley. House Draven has operatives in the nearby village. We could stage a distraction, fire perhaps, or an apparent assault on the main gate, draw Constantine's forces away from the interior. That might work. Lucian's finger tapped the map thoughtfully. Elena, you'll stay with me. No separating, no matter what happens. I'm not helpless. No. But you're mortal. One mistake, one moment of bad luck, and you die. Permanently. I'd rather avoid that. His concern warmed something in Elena's chest. Dangerous warmth, the kind that made people do stupid things. She pushed it away, focusing on the tactical problem. What about after we get Thomas out? Constantine won't just let us leave. He won't have a choice. Marcus will be waiting with House Draven reinforcements at the valley entrance. Once we're clear of the estate, we'll have superior numbers. Lucian looked up, meeting her eyes. The key is speed. Get in, locate Marlowe, extract him before Constantine can mobilize his full forces. And if it goes wrong? Then we improvise, quickly. Marcus rolled up the maps. I'll need 6 hours to position my people. That means we move at midnight tomorrow. Can you both be ready? We'll be ready, Elena said before Lucian could answer. The vampire gave her a look, half exasperation, half respect. Then I'll return to my operatives. Lucian, I'll send word when we're in position. Marcus moved toward the door, then paused. Miss Thorne, one piece of advice. When you face Constantine, don't look directly into his eyes. He's old enough to mesmerize humans with a glance. It won't work on Lucian, but you're vulnerable. Noted. Thank you. After Marcus left, the manor settled into thick silence. Elena gathered the maps, her hand steady despite her racing pulse. Tomorrow night, she'd walk into a vampire stronghold to rescue her mentor. The man who'd taught her that knowledge was power, that understanding monsters meant surviving them. You're afraid. Lucian's voice came from behind her. Of course I am. I'd be stupid not to be. But you're doing it anyway. Yes. Elena turned, finding him closer than expected. The library's single candle painted shadows across his face. Thomas saved me after my aunt died. He took me in, gave me purpose. I won't abandon him. Loyalty is admirable. It's also how people die. Then I'll die loyal. She met his gaze steadily. Better than living as a coward. Lucian smiled, that rare, genuine expression that transformed his face. You're extraordinary, Elena Thorne. I don't think you realize it yet. I'm just stubborn. Stubbornness is its own form of courage. He reached out, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. His fingers lingered on her cheek, cold and careful. Tell me something. When this is over, when Marlowe is safe and Constantine is dealt with, what will you do? The question caught her off guard. She'd spent so long focused on immediate survival, on completing her research, on proving herself useful, that she'd never considered after. I don't know. Finish documenting bloodline histories, maybe. Make sure this information isn't lost. And then? Then, Elena hesitated. I suppose I'll find another project. Another mystery to solve. What if the mystery is yourself? Lucian's thumb traced her jawline. You're Thornwood. Your blood judges vampiric nature. That's not a small thing, Elena. That's a legacy. I didn't ask for a legacy. No one ever does. We inherit them regardless. His expression grew distant. I was a physician before. In Venice, 1697. I treated plague victims, trying to save lives one at a time. Then I met a vampire who offered me immortality. Told me I could save so many more people if I had infinite time. But immortality changes you. Distances you. After 200 years, human lives start to feel fleeting, insignificant. I had to work to remember that each one matters. His focus returned to her face. You remind me. Your mortality, your urgency. It's clarifying. Elena's breath caught. The intimacy of his words, the vulnerability. This was Lucian without his mask, showing her the man beneath the predator. I'm not here to be your moral compass. No. You're here because you refuse to be dismissed. His hand dropped. And because some part of me has wanted to apologize for 18 years, even before I remembered why. Apologize? For telling a child she was useless. For not seeing that she was terrified and brave and deserving of better. Lucian stepped back, putting distance between them. You were right to spend 18 years proving me wrong. I was arrogant, cruel. You deserved acknowledgement, and I gave you rejection. The apology landed like a physical touch. Elena had imagined this moment countless times, confronting him, hearing him admit his mistake. But now that it was happening, she found the anger she'd carried had transmuted into something else. Understanding, perhaps, or the recognition that grudges were exhausting, and she was so very tired. "You couldn't have known what I'd become," she said quietly. "I should have seen your potential anyway." "Children aren't useless, Elena. They're just unfinished." His smile was sad. "I'm sorry, truly, for not being better." Something loosened in Elena's chest, a knot she'd carried since childhood, finally unraveling. "Thank you for saying that. It changes nothing about tomorrow's danger." "No, but it changes us." "Right now," Lucian nodded slowly. "Then let's make tomorrow count. If we're walking into death together, I'd prefer we do it as allies rather than debtor and creditor." "Allies." Elena extended her hand. "I can work with that." He took her hand, and this time the coldness felt less alien, more like possibility. "Come, you need rest. Tomorrow will be exhausting." They moved through the manor together, Lucian checking windows and wards, while Elena tried to calm her racing thoughts. In the drawing room, the fire had burned low. She added wood, watching flames catch and spread, consuming fuel with patient hunger. "Lucian? Yes? What you said about immortality distancing you from humanity, does it get easier? The loneliness?" He was quiet for a long moment. "No. You just get better at enduring it." "That's bleak. It's honest." He settled into the chair across from her. "But occasionally something happens that makes eternity feel less like a burden. Meeting someone who sees you clearly and doesn't flinch, who throws knives to save you despite every survival instinct screaming otherwise." Elena's heart did something complicated. "Are you saying I make immortality more bearable?" "I'm saying you remind me what it was to be human. That's a rare gift." His eyes reflected firelight like a cat's. "Get some rest, Elena. Tomorrow we face monsters." "You included?" "Especially me included." She smiled despite everything. Despite the fear, the danger, the fact that she was planning a suicidal rescue mission with a vampire who'd rejected her as a child. Maybe she'd lost her mind. Maybe this was all some elaborate death wish. Or maybe this was what living felt like. Real living, not just surviving. Elena pulled the blanket around herself, closing her eyes. Tomorrow they'd storm a vampire fortress. Tonight, she'd let herself trust the predator keeping watch over her sleep. And if that was foolish, so be it. She'd spent 18 years being careful. One night of trust felt like rebellion, like freedom. Chapter 8. The Price of Forever. Midnight found them in the Carpathian foothills, Marcus's operatives positioned throughout the valley. Elena wore dark clothing borrowed from the manor's stores, too large, but serviceable. Her heart hammered against her ribs as Lucian led her through pine forest toward the cliff face, moving with preternatural silence. "Remember," he whispered, "stay close. Don't speak unless necessary. And if I tell you to run, I won't. Elena, I won't abandon you. Or Thomas. We do this together or not at all." She met his eyes in the darkness. "You taught me that alliances matter. So trust our alliance." Lucian's jaw tightened, but he nodded. Above them, Constantine's estate loomed, a Gothic nightmare of stone and iron, windows blazing with light. Somewhere inside, Thomas was waiting. If he was still alive, if this wasn't an elaborate trap, it was definitely an elaborate trap. They reached the old servant's entrance exactly where the map indicated, a wooden door set into the cliff, half buried in debris. Lucian pulled away the accumulated branches and stone with casual strength. Behind the door, stairs descended into darkness. "Once we're inside, the blood wards will alert Constantine to my presence," Lucian said. "We'll have minutes at most before guards arrive. Can you navigate in the dark?" Elena pulled out a small flashlight. "I came prepared." "Of course you did." His smile was brief. "Let's hope preparation is enough." They descended. The passage was narrow, the air thick with centuries of neglect. Water dripped somewhere distant, and Elena heard rats skittering ahead. Her flashlight beam caught ancient stone, worn smooth by forgotten feet. The passage opened into a wine cellar, barrels covered in dust, bottles racked in rows. Beyond, Elena heard voices, Guards speaking in Romanian. Lucian held up a hand, tilting his head to listen. 2 guards. Mortal, not vampire. Standard patrol. He looked at Elena. Stay here. I'll handle them. Lucian. But he was already moving, crossing the cellar with inhuman speed. Elena heard a brief scuffle, then silence. When she reached the doorway, both guards lay unconscious, neatly arranged against the wall. Not dead, Lucian said, answering her unspoken question. Just sleeping. They'll wake in an hour with headaches and no memory of this night. How humane of you. I have my moments. He gestured to a staircase leading up. The holding cells should be 1 level up. We find Marlowe, extract him through this passage, and an alarm split the air, high, wailing, unmistakable. Lucian swore in Italian. The blood ward. He knows we're here. Then we run. Elena took the stairs 2 at a time, Lucian keeping pace. The alarm echoed through stone corridors, joined by shouts and running feet. They emerged into a hallway lined with cells, iron bars, ancient locks, the smell of fear and despair. Thomas, Elena called. Thomas Marlowe. Elena? A weak voice from the 3rd cell. She ran toward it, finding her mentor behind bars. Older than she remembered. Thinner, but alive. His eyes widened in horror. No, you shouldn't be here. It's a trap, I know. We're leaving anyway. Elena tried the cell door. Locked. Lucian. He was there in an instant, gripping the lock. Metal shrieked as he tore it free. Thomas stumbled out and Elena caught him. He felt fragile, diminished by captivity. Can you walk? I'll manage. Thomas gripped her shoulder. But Elena, you need to understand. Constantine doesn't just want you. He wants me. The voice echoed down the corridor. Cultured, cold, ancient beyond measure. Elena turned to find a vampire standing at the hallway's end. Tall, dark-haired, beautiful in the way of poisonous things. His eyes were black ice, and his smile promised suffering. Constantine Vasilis had arrived. Lucian Corvus. How predictable. Constantine moved closer with languid grace. You always were sentimental about humans. It's your greatest weakness. And you were always sadistic about power. It's yours. Lucian positioned himself between Constantine and Elena, every muscle coiled. Let them go. Your quarrel is with me. Oh, I intend to take them. After I've dealt with you. Constantine's gaze flicked to Elena. The last Thornwood. Do you know how long I've been searching for your bloodline? Decades of research, experimentation, all to isolate what makes your blood special. You mean torture, Elena said flatly. You've been torturing people to steal their genetic legacy. Such harsh words for progress. Constantine smiled. But yes, and now that I have you here, I can finally complete my work. Imagine, vampire blood enhanced by Thornwood properties. We could walk in daylight, feed without consequence, become gods. You'd become monsters. Lucian's voice dropped to a growl. More than you already are, says the vampire who's fallen for a human. How maudlin. Constantine's hand moved in a gesture, and 6 guards appeared from side passages, all vampires, all armed with silver. You're outnumbered, old friend. Surrender the girl, and I'll make your end quick. I'd rather suffer slow. Lucian's fangs extended. Marcus, now! An explosion rocked the estate. Marcus's distraction, right on schedule. The walls shuddered, dust raining from the ceiling. Constantine's guards hesitated, looking toward the sound. Lucian used that instant, launching himself at the nearest vampire with brutal efficiency. Run! He shouted to Elena. She grabbed Thomas, pulling him back toward the wine cellar. But Constantine was faster. He appeared in front of them, blocking the passage, his smile all teeth. I don't think so. Elena did the only thing she could think of. She thrust her bleeding hand forward. The cut from Marcus's blood test had reopened during the run, blood dripping from her palm. Touch me, she said, voice steadier than she felt. Touch me and be judged, Constantine laughed. You think I fear your bloodline's judgment? I know what I am, child. I've made peace with monstrosity. Then prove it. Elena stepped closer, hand outstretched. Touch my blood. Show me you're not afraid. Behind her, she heard Lucian fighting, the sounds of violence echoing through the corridor. Thomas was muttering warnings, but she ignored him. This was a gamble, the stupidest gamble of her life. Constantine's smile faded. He stared at her bleeding palm, and for just a moment, Elena saw something flicker in his eyes. Fear. Not of death. Of judgment, coward, she whispered. The word landed. Constantine's hand shot out, gripping her wrist, pressing their bloods together. The reaction was immediate and catastrophic. Light exploded between their hands, not the gentle glow of Marcus's test, but searing brilliance that threw shadows across walls. Constantine screamed, a sound of pure agony, his hand burning where their blood mixed. The smell of charred flesh filled the air. What? He tried to pull away, but Elena held on with desperate strength. Judgment, she said. My blood knows what you are, and it rejects you. Constantine's skin began to crack, black lines spreading from where they touched. He tore free with inhuman force, stumbling back, his hand a ruined mess of burnt flesh and exposed bone. Impossible. The Thornwood bloodline doesn't have this kind of power. Maybe it evolved, Elena said. Or maybe you just never encountered one who wanted you to burn. More explosions above, Marcus's forces breaching the estate. Constantine's guards were fleeing toward the main levels, leaving him alone with Lucian, Elena, and Thomas. The ancient vampire looked at his ruined hand, then at Elena, and something terrible crossed his face. You've just declared war, little Thornwood. Good. Elena's voice didn't shake. I've been preparing for war since I was 7 years old. Lucian appeared at her side, bloodied but victorious. Time to leave. Marcus has cleared the upper levels. They ran, Elena supporting Thomas, Lucian watching their backs. Behind them, Constantine's screams echoed through the estate, promising vengeance and suffering. But they were already descending into the wine cellar, through the servants' passage, out into cold mountain air. Marcus waited at the forest's edge with a dozen house-draven vampires. I heard the explosions, and the screaming. What happened? Thornwood blood happened, Lucian said grimly. Elena's bloodline is more powerful than anyone realized. She burned Constantine with just a touch. Marcus's eyes widened. That shouldn't be possible. And yet. Elena helped Thomas into a waiting vehicle, her hand still throbbing where she'd cut it. The blood had stopped glowing, but she could feel the residual warmth. Power, sleeping in her veins. Legacy. Lucian climbed in beside her as the vehicle pulled away, leaving Constantine's burning estate behind. You should have run when I told you to. I know. You could have died. I know that too. And yet you gambled everything on an untested theory about your bloodline's power. He stared at her. Something unreadable in his expression. You're either brilliantly insane or insanely brilliant. I haven't decided which. Can I be both? Despite everything, the danger, the violence, Thomas's weak breathing beside her, Lucian laughed. Real and warm and almost human. Yes, I suppose you can. The vehicle carried them down the mountain, toward dawn, toward whatever came next. Elena looked at her hand, at the blood drying on her palm. Power, judgment, legacy. She wasn't just a researcher anymore. She was something else, something dangerous, and Constantine Vasilis now knew it too. Chapter 9. The Battle of Blood and Will. They didn't make it to the valley entrance. Constantine's forces intercepted them halfway down the mountain, a coordinated assault that suggested he'd anticipated their escape route. The vehicle swerved as something heavy slammed into the roof. Lucian threw Elena against the seat, shielding her with his body as the window exploded inward. Out, Marcus shouted from the front. Everyone out. The forest became a battlefield. Elena stumbled into pine needles and darkness. Thomas collapsed beside her. Around them, vampires clashed with inhuman speed. House Draven versus House Vasilis, centuries of supernatural conflict erupting into violence. The air filled with sounds no human throat could make, snarls and screams that belonged to nightmares. Lucian materialized in front of Elena, his eyes gone completely black. Stay down. Don't move. Then he was gone, engaging 3 Vasilis vampires simultaneously. Elena watched in horrified fascination as he moved. Brutal efficiency. each strike calculated to disable or destroy. This was Lucian without restraint, the predator unleashed. Beautiful and terrifying. Elena. Thomas gripped her arm, his voice weak. Listen to me. Your blood, what you did to Constantine, it's not just judgment. It's transformation. What? The Thornwood bloodline was designed to do more than judge. It can change vampires, enhance those with noble intent, poison those with corrupt nature. Thomas coughed, and Elena saw blood on his lips. Internal injuries bleeding out slowly. But there's more. The bloodline can also create. Grant immortality on different terms than the vampiric curse. Elena's mind reeled. I mean you can make vampires, but vampires who retain their humanity, their moral compass. Vampires who are judged by their own conscience rather than their thirst. His grip tightened. That's why Constantine hunted your bloodline. Not just to experiment, to prevent this knowledge from being used against him. A vampire appeared above them. Constantine, his hand still ruined, his face twisted with rage. How touching. The mentor imparts final wisdom. He reached for Elena. Lucian slammed into him from the side, and they went down in a tangle of violence. Marcus appeared, pulling Thomas away from the combat. Get them to the secondary vehicle. I'll hold here. Marcus, Elena started. Go! Elena ran, half carrying Thomas through the forest. Behind her, she heard Lucian and Constantine's battle. Primal, vicious, the sound of ancient predators trying to kill each other. Other house-draven vampires formed a protective circle, guiding her toward a second vehicle hidden in the trees. But they didn't reach it. Constantine broke free of Lucian's assault, appearing in Elena's path with impossible speed. His hand, the one she'd burned, shot out, gripping her throat. You've cost me everything. My hand, my research, my reputation. He lifted her off the ground and Elena felt her windpipe compress. I'll make you pay for that. Slowly. Darkness crept into her vision. She clawed at his hand, but he was stone, immovable. This was it. This was how she died. Strangled by a monster in a Carpathian forest. Her research incomplete, her legacy unfulfilled. No. The thought came from somewhere deep, primal. She'd spent 18 years refusing to be helpless. She wouldn't start now. Elena's hand found Constantine's ruined one, pressing her bleeding palm against the burn. And she pushed, not physically. Something else. The power sleeping in her blood, awakening in desperation. She pushed judgment into him, forced him to see himself as she saw him. A coward who preyed on the helpless, who twisted immortality into torture, who feared being seen clearly. Constantine screamed. The sound shattered the night. He dropped Elena, stumbling back, his eyes wide with horror. What did you make me see? The truth. Elena's voice was rough, aching. You're terrified of being judged because you know what verdict would be rendered. You're not a god, Constantine. You're just a very old coward. Lucian appeared behind Constantine, his hand closing around the ancient vampire's throat. I've waited 300 years for this moment. For justified cause to end you. His other hand produced a stake, wood, silver-tipped, designed to kill even old vampires. For Adela, for every human you've tortured. For Elena. Wait. Elena forced herself to stand, though her legs shook. Don't kill him, Lucian froze. What? Don't kill him. Make him face trial before the council. Make him answer for his crimes publicly. Death is too easy. He should suffer justice. Constantine laughed weakly. The girl has mercy. How quaint. No. Elena met his eyes. I just want you to live long enough to watch your house fall. To see everything you built crumble because you couldn't resist playing God with human lives. Marcus appeared, bloodied but alive, accompanied by house-draven reinforcements. We've captured most of his forces. Constantine Vasilis, by the authority of the council, you're under arrest for treaty violations, unlawful imprisonment, and experimentation on protected bloodlines. They bound Constantine with silver chains, hauling him away. Elena watched, feeling nothing but exhaustion. Thomas lay unconscious nearby, his breathing shallow. Victory felt hollow when people were dying. Lucian moved to her side, his hand gentle on her back. You should have let me kill him. Maybe. but you taught me that we're not defined by our worst impulses. We're defined by what we choose when given the chance to be better. Elena looked at him. Besides, you said you'd spent 300 years waiting. What will you do now that the waiting's over? I haven't decided yet. His smile was slight. But I have time to figure it out. Marcus approached, his expression grave. Thomas Marlowe needs medical attention immediately. There's a hospital in Brasov that treats supernatural injuries. We can have him there in 30 minutes. Then go. Take him. Elena gripped Thomas's hand one last time. Save him, please. We will. Marcus signaled to his people, who carefully lifted Thomas into the vehicle. As they pulled away, Elena felt Lucian's arms wrap around her from behind, steadying her as her knees finally gave out. I've got you, he murmured. I know. They stood in the forest as dawn approached, surrounded by the aftermath of battle. House Vasilis had fallen. The treaty would be upheld. Thomas would survive, probably. And Elena had discovered she was more than a researcher, more than a survivor. She was a bridge between worlds, carrying power that could judge and transform and create. What happens now? She asked. Now we rebuild. Make sure this never happens again. Lucian turned her to face him. And Elena? You don't have to be afraid of your power or your legacy. I'm not afraid. She touched his face, cold skin beneath her warm palm. I'm just tired. Then rest. I'll keep watch, always, for as long as you'll let me. His expression softened. You've spent 18 years proving you're not a child. You succeeded spectacularly. Elena smiled despite everything. Good, because I have a proposition for you. I'm listening. Thomas told me something before Constantine attacked. About my bloodline's true purpose. About creating vampires who retain their humanity. She held Lucian's gaze. I want to understand that power. And I want your help. Elena, I'm not asking to be turned. Not yet. Not until I'm ready, and maybe not ever. But if my blood can create something different, vampires who don't lose themselves to immortality, that's worth exploring. Worth understanding. Lucian was quiet for a long moment. That's dangerous knowledge. Most worthwhile things are. You're not afraid of the implications. I'm terrified, but I'm more afraid of letting this power go unexamined, of wasting my legacy because I was too cautious. Elena stepped closer. Help me. Teach me about immortality. And maybe I'll teach you about remaining human despite it. You're asking me to be your partner. In research and in life. Yes, if you're willing. Lucian pulled her close, resting his forehead against hers. I've been alone for 300 years, Elena. Alone with my guilt, my memories, my endless existence. You make me feel less like a monster and more like a man who made mistakes but can still choose better. So is that a yes? It's a yes. He kissed her forehead, gentle and cold and perfect. But know this, if we do this, if we explore your bloodline's power together, there's no going back. You'll be tied to the vampire world forever. Even if you remain human, you'll never be ordinary again. I was never ordinary, Elena smiled. I was Thornwood. I just didn't know it yet. Dawn light filtered through the trees, turning the forest gold. Lucian flinched from the brightness but didn't pull away. For one moment they stood together in the light, vampire and human, predator and judge, two people who'd found each other across 18 years and countless mistakes. Come on, Elena said. Let's go home. Where's home? Wherever we build it. Chapter 10. Children of Night and Choice. 6 months later, Elena descended the stairs of the new sanctuary, not a mausoleum this time, but a restored manor in Scotland, purchased with Marcus Draven's assistance and House Corvus resources. The library here rivaled Lucian's destroyed collection, shelves packed with texts spanning centuries. But it was the new wing that mattered most. A research laboratory designed to study bloodline properties safely, ethically, with consent at its core. Thomas Marlowe worked at one of the lab tables, fully recovered from his captivity, his gray hair catching afternoon light through the windows. He looked up as Elena entered, smiling. The latest blood samples are ready for analysis. And I think I've isolated the genetic marker that allows Thornwood blood to affect vampiric metabolism. Show me. Elena pulled up a stool beside him, examining the microscope slides. 6 months of research had yielded incredible discoveries. Her bloodline didn't just judge. It could fundamentally alter how vampires processed blood, how they responded to daylight, how they maintained their humanity against the erosion of immortality. "It's remarkable," Thomas murmured. "Your blood essentially provides a bridge. Vampires who feed from you with consent gain temporary resistance to their usual weaknesses. Extended daylight tolerance, reduced bloodlust, enhanced emotional regulation." Temporary being the key word. Elena made notes. The effect lasts roughly 48 hours per feeding. To make it permanent would require a complete transformation. Using your blood during the turning process. Lucian's voice came from the doorway. He'd entered silently, as always, dressed in casual clothing that still somehow looked elegant. Which brings us to the question we've been avoiding for 6 months. Elena's hand stilled on her notes. They'd been avoiding it. Dancing around the implications, focusing on research, on helping the other bloodline descendants Marcus had located and brought under protection. 37 people worldwide, all carrying variations of bloodline traits, all entitled to treaty protection, now that Constantine's regime had fallen. House Vasilis was under new leadership, a younger vampire named Irina, who'd immediately begun reforms, releasing captives, ending experiments, paying reparations to affected families. The council had sentenced Constantine to 50 years of imprisonment, followed by supervised probation. Unusually merciful for vampire justice, but Elena had insisted. Death was too easy. Let him live with his shame. What question are we avoiding? Elena asked, though she knew. Lucian moved closer, and even after 6 months, his presence still made her pulse quicken. They'd grown close, partners in research, in rebuilding, and navigating the complex politics of vampire society. But the question of immortality hung between them, unspoken but present. "The question of whether you want eternity," Lucian said quietly. "And if you do, whether you want it with me," Thomas cleared his throat. "I should give you 2 privacy. Stay." Elena touched his arm. "You're part of this decision. You both are." She looked at Lucian. "I've been thinking about it. Every day, weighing the costs and benefits, the implications, and I'm afraid, of losing my humanity, of becoming something that sees mortals as fleeting, of losing the urgency that makes me who I am." Elena stood, pacing. "But I'm also afraid of leaving this work unfinished, of having 70 more years at most to understand my bloodline's potential when I need centuries." "Fear is reasonable," Lucian said. "Immortality is not a decision to make lightly." "I know, which is why I have conditions." Elena turned to face him fully. "If I do this, if I choose to become vampire, I want it done using my bloodline. I want to see if we can create something different. A vampire who retains human moral framework, who's judged by conscience rather than thirst. You want to experiment on yourself. I want to prove it's possible. For others like me, other bloodline descendants who might want immortality but fear losing themselves." Elena's voice strengthened. "We could change everything, Lucian. Create a new path between human and vampire. But it requires risk." "My risk," Thomas spoke up, hesitant. "Elena, the danger, we don't know if this will work. You could die, or become something neither human nor vampire trapped between states." "I know, but we'll never know without trying." Elena looked at Lucian. "Unless you're not willing. Unless you don't want me to, I want you to be absolutely certain." Lucian crossed the distance between them, taking her hands. "I've had 300 years to make peace with what I am. You've had 25 years of mortality. That's not enough time to understand what you'd be giving up. Then give me more time. A year. 2. However long it takes for me to be ready." Elena squeezed his hands. "But know that I'm choosing this, Lucian. Not because I'm running from death or desperate for power. I'm choosing it because this work matters. Because protecting bloodline descendants requires someone who understands both worlds. Because," she paused, gathering courage, "because I want more time with you. Centuries, if possible." Lucian's expression softened. "Elena, I love you." The words came easier than expected. "I love that you keep watch while I sleep. That you respect my mortality even while offering immortality. That you see me as a partner, not a possession. I spent 18 years obsessed with revenge against the vampire who rejected me. And somewhere along the way, I fell in love with who he'd become. I rejected a child because I was arrogant and blind." Lucian cupped her face. But you grew into a woman who taught me what courage looks like, who threw knives to save me, who burned ancient vampires with judgment, who chose mercy when killing would have been easier. I love you, Elena Thorne, and if you choose immortality, I'll spend eternity trying to deserve you. Thomas made a discreet exit, leaving them alone in the laboratory. Elena leaned into Lucian's touch, feeling the familiar coldness, imagining a future where she'd share that temperature, where she'd have centuries to continue research, to protect bloodline descendants, to understand her legacy. 1 year, she said. Give me 1 year to finish the current research phase, to make sure Thomas can continue the work if something goes wrong, to say proper goodbyes to my mortal life. 1 year, Lucian agreed. And then? Then we try. Together. We transform me using Thornwood blood during the turning, and we see if I retain my humanity. If I can be vampire without losing the things that make me myself. Elena smiled. And if it works, we offer it to others. Create a new kind of immortality. Lucian's thumb traced her jaw. You're extraordinary, you know that? I'm stubborn. Same thing. They kissed then, gentle and careful, human warmth meeting vampiric cold. It tasted like possibility, like futures unfolding, like choices made freely, like love that transcended species and age and the weight of centuries. When they broke apart, Elena noticed the light had shifted. Sunset, painting the laboratory in amber and crimson. Lucian stood in that light, not flinching, his hand still holding hers. The Thornwood blood you've been taking, Elena said. It's working. You're tolerating daylight better. For 48 hours at a time, yes. Then I need more. His smile was wry. You've made me dependent on you. Good. I like you dependent. Elena pulled him closer. Come on, let's go upstairs. I want to watch the sunset properly before it disappears. They climbed to the manor's tower, where Marcus had helped construct a viewing platform. From there, the Scottish Highlands stretched endlessly, rolling moors, distant mountains, sky painted in fire. Other bloodline descendants were arriving tomorrow, a family from Greece, a scholar from Japan, a young woman from Brazil, all coming to learn about their heritage, to understand the power sleeping in their blood. Elena's sanctuary, her legacy, her choice. What are you thinking? Lucian asked. That I spent 18 years preparing for revenge, and ended up finding purpose instead. Elena leaned against him. That the vampire who told me I don't bite children taught me that power isn't about domination. It's about what you choose to protect. And what are you choosing to protect? Everyone who needs it. Human and vampire alike. She looked up at him. Starting with you. Lucian's laugh was soft, genuine. I don't need protection. Yes, you do. From loneliness. From becoming the monster you fear. From forgetting that immortality should be about living, not just surviving. Elena rose on her toes, kissing his cheek. I'll protect you from that. For as long as I exist. Whether that's 70 years or 700. I suspect it will be 700. His arms wrapped around her. You're too stubborn to die young. Good. They watched the sun set together. Vampire and human, predator and judge. Two people who'd found each other across impossible odds. Tomorrow, more work, more research, more bloodline descendants to protect and guide. But tonight, this moment, watching daylight fade while standing with someone who'd rejected her as a child and loved her as a woman, this was enough. More than enough. Perfect. Epilogue. 18 years later. The child stood in the manor's library, 7 years old, dark-haired, her eyes reflecting the lamplight like a cat's. She watched Elena sort documents, small hands folded politely. Are you really immortal? The child asked. Elena looked up from her work. 18 years since her transformation, and she still marveled at how it had worked, retaining her humanity, her moral compass, her ability to choose compassion over hunger. The first successful Thornwood vampire, and in the years since, 3 others had undergone the same transformation. All successful, all remaining fundamentally themselves despite immortality. Yes, Elena said gently, I'm immortal. But I wasn't always. I chose this. Why? Because I had work to finish, people to protect, and because someone I loved offered to share eternity with me. Elena gestured to a chair. Come here. Let me tell you a story. The child climbed into the chair, eyes wide. Is it scary? Parts of it. But it ends well. Elena smiled. It's about a girl who was told she was useless and spent 18 years proving that wrong. About a vampire who'd forgotten how to be human, and a woman who reminded him. About revenge that transformed into something better. Love, among other things. Elena pulled out an old photograph. Herself at 7, standing beside her aunt at that disastrous gathering in London. She barely remembered that girl, so afraid, so powerless. I don't bite children, Lucian had said, dismissing her, rejecting her, but children grew up, and sometimes they returned with more than revenge in their hearts. The point of the story, Elena told the child, is that you're never useless, even when people dismiss you, even when you feel small and powerless. You're always becoming something, and what you become is your choice. The child nodded solemnly. I want to be like you when I grow up. Then be brave. Be curious. Be kind when you can, and fierce when you must. Elena touched the child's cheek. And remember, you're not defined by what others think of you. You're defined by who you choose to be. Lucian appeared in the doorway, still moving with that inhuman grace, still beautiful and dangerous, and hers. Time for bed, little one. Your parents are waiting. The child scampered off, leaving them alone. Lucian moved to Elena's side, reading over her shoulder. Still documenting bloodline histories? Always. There's so much we still don't know. Elena leaned against him. Did you hear? Marcus found another descendant. Thailand this time. Your sanctuary will need to expand again. Good. The more people we protect, the better. Elena turned, studying Lucian's face. Even after 18 years, she still found new things to love about him. Do you ever regret it? Turning me? Never. You're exactly who you've always been, just with more time to be brilliant. His arms wrapped around her. Do you regret choosing immortality? Elena thought about it. The centuries stretching ahead, the research continuing, the lives they'd saved and would save, the love they'd built, patient and fierce and enduring. No, she said finally. I regret nothing. They stood together in the library's lamplight, surrounded by centuries of knowledge, protected by love that had survived rejection and revenge and transformation. Outside, the moon rose over Scottish moors. Tomorrow, more work, more challenges, more bloodline descendants to guide and protect. But tonight, they had this moment, this perfect, eternal moment. Elena smiled, remembering a 7-year-old girl who'd been told she was useless, who'd spent 18 years refusing to accept that verdict, who'd returned for revenge and found purpose instead. I don't bite children, Lucian had said, but Elena wasn't a child anymore, and she'd never been useless. She was Thornwood, researcher, vampire, partner, protector. She was choice made flesh. Legacy walking, judgment and mercy combined. She was exactly who she'd chosen to become. An eternity stretched ahead, full of possibility.